All right. So first of all, let's just get out. Let's just make this nice and clear. If we're a little bit paranoid about things that you want out, things that you don't want out, it all comes back to identification. You know what is it we're concealing and so forth. You know, if you don't want the call recorded, that's fine. You can always, you know, I think making it nice and clear what it's about is we're talking about first-hand experiences. So that's really all we're going by. Okay, and we can basically go from there, and break things down, because that's really what we're going to be looking at, is breaking the assumptions of what we think we know. We're going to be scrutinising. That's pretty much in a nutshell. Okay. Okay. So I'll give you a little bit of a snapshot. First of all, look, this journey, I guess it's if I was to share with you, it's one of the most perilous journeys that one can ever imagine. It's basically a new frontier, and the new frontier is between the ears. And basically, you've got to come to a point in yourself where there's nothing left anymore in this world that you've got to live for, and you come to a point where you're ready to die in this moment to what you believe you think you know. And I guess it's basically you've suffered enough in this world to basically bring you to a point where you don't care about any outcome. You're no longer concerned about yourself. If you're concerned about yourself, then you still need some more suffering and pain in this world. Because if you're concerned about you as an individual, and you're looking to get out of something, and you're concerned for your own, whether there's an outcome or whatever. This is a journey, and the journey is all we focus on. The outcomes, either we go by this worked or that didn't work, and what am I going to do next time that's different? What am I doing now? And what am I going to do different? All right. So this journey, basically, I came to a point probably a good 20 years ago where basically, to me, I didn't want anything else in this life other than to learn how to live in the world and be in the world, but not of this world. And ever since then, it's been a pretty incredible journey. Now, it all started, if I may say, with the Batman. Now, Batman 20 years ago was pretty, and I still love the guy, and I always will love the guy. Without Batman, I don't know how one starts the journey, because Batman 20 years ago, the calls were very different to how they are now. So the calls were very much question based, and basically to start renewing the mind was basically to start asking the question for the first time, and the question does not come easy. Does the question come easy? No. When the head is full of knowledge and information, it's very hard. Unless you've done 500 hours of the Batman calls, and I'm talking about the first calls back 20 years ago, if you're able to get a handle of some of these bat calls, they will help, I believe, quite substantially on the first steps. These are the first steps to it's. Imagine this journey is a bit like learning an Aikido Japanese martial arts. And it's basically you're starting off on white belt, and it's a 20-year journey. Okay, it's not an overnight flick of the switch and it's done. No, it's everyday meditation, meditating every single day on the assumptions of what one believes they know, and that's to do with every word, terminology, every little thing that has come into the mind since birth. From your mummy, your daddy, from the churches or whatever you've been introduced to, the schools, the institutions, wherever you've gone, whoever you've spoken to, all of that world you're basically renewing and reverse engineering every single word that you've come into, and that all comes back to the identification of who we think we are today, and that's the heavy programming. And the heavy programming, it stops one from asking the question. You can't be heavy programmed and then start asking questions. You can't serve two masters. You either want to fill the head with knowledge and information, or you fill the head, or you empty out the trash and start asking the questions, because the question becomes easier when the trash is emptied from the head. When you think you know something, the question won't come. And don't ask me why it's like that. I'm not the designer of it, or am I? So I'm, as far as the designers is put all this, you can't. Who can serve two masters? You're either serving the master who believes he knows shit, the little devil, or the one who goes, "What the fruitcake do I know?" Yeah, which one wins? Because if you think you know shit, well, there's a rude awakening before you. And that's why I'm saying in relation to Batman, in the early days, the calls were very much about first-hand experiences. People go out and they go and try it out, and they go and start, they go and throw a rock in the cop station, whatever, just as a figure of speech. So they start to work out how to live in the world, but not be of this world, and basically start living without statements, without actually making any statements. How do I live in this world, and how do I start to question any assumption that comes my way, if I own such a thing? Okay, and that's why I feel if you don't do 500 hours of the Batman 20 years ago, right now I can actually understand why Batman, perhaps a lot of the stuff that he's talking about, isn't helpful to most people, because very few people have actually gone out and done the due diligence. It's not his fault that it's unhelpful. It's just that very few people have actually gone out and tested all of this and gone past and beyond, even where Batman's at now. I'm not saying it's, one surpassing someone, we're going further. It's basically, it's like a relay. It's like you pass a javelin, and then how far does one go? If it's true in the scripture, it says you'll do greater things than I, right? Well, maybe we've just gone that extra mile. And if Batman's open to that perspective, which I believe he would be, it all aligns. And I think it's important that that understanding is important for brothers and sisters to come together in passing on first-hand experience. And that's how it was 20 years ago and 15 years ago with the Batman. We all used to come together, and we all used to discuss, what the experience was, and then we would cross-examine one another, question one another, and then we'd go off again, and it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of the brotherhood was great, because it was like learning a martial arts. There was nothing personal. There was nothing personal about name calling. There was nothing personal about raising the voice and saying, "You're fucking on the wrong call, fuck off," or something like that, because sometimes you need to rattle the cage for someone to snap out of the inertia, the coma that we're in. And the coma is wrapped up in possession, ownership. It's very hard to come out of that coma, that we're comatized. We're like it's like a delirium. We're in a daze. It's like very hard to see from the fog. It's atrophy, you want to call it. Anyway, can anyone hear me?
Loud and clear, brother. Perfectly.
All right.
I hear you.
So this is just a snapshot of how important it is to start off the journey. And if we're not renewing the minds, and you just want to listen to some arsehole who just, yakkers on and so forth and may fill in the different pieces for you, it won't work, because even the questions that you think is the holy grail and you think, oh, these questions, they're amazing. Well, sorry, they're only amazing when you renew the mind. And renewing the mind is part of it, is emptying out the trash. And if you don't empty out the trash on the daily basis, and when you keep looking into words and you start looking into words, you're looking for meaning, and there's identification, and we don't start looking at words as property, and there's and whose property is this? Yeah. And if it's if it's property, someone else's property, the possessor's property, for example, who's able to interpret this? So if it's not your property, how can anyone interpret such things? Yeah. So how can anyone interpret property that doesn't belong to you? This is the very hard concept to conceive. Would anyone agree with that?
I believe so, brother.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is what we're looking at. And the system is the only thing that everybody, well, I'm led to believe, we're trying to get out of the system. And it's the one thing, the system is there to crush all mankind. Why? Because whose system is it? Man wants desolation, and he'll get desolation. He's going to live in a wasteland. Within the next 10 years, it compounds on itself, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Everything starts going from bad to worse to worse to worse. So that's just a reflection of the state of man's mind. And man has taken it upon himself to run ruin on this planet. What? I'll take that. And everything comes back to, I'll take that. Yeah? So anyway, there's enough. That's just a little bit of a snapshot, a bit of a foundation of where things are going in relation to how I see things. So now I'll pass it on to you boys. You boys can start talking.
Wow. Run ruin. Take a snapshot of that. Run ruin.
Yeah. That's all man does is run ruin. And that's about the best he can possibly do on his own. He cannot do anything better than run ruin. And that's all he can do. He can drop bombs on you. He can do whatever he wants, but that's about as best as he can come up with. If that's the best that man can do, then why do we rely on man? Why do we seek out answers in man? What do you think man knows? Does one think man knows anything? So anyway, back to you boys.
Brother, one time you mentioned defending the beast by projectile language. Could you possibly expand on that? Could you possibly expand on that?
Could you clarify that again? Say that again.
One time you were talking about how we defend the beast by using projectile language. So I was just wondering if you could expand on that.
Okay. All right. So okay. So imagine okay, I'll go back, and I think I was talking to Toto about this. First of all, just imagine, and this is a very bizarre concept. Imagine, just for, I'll just say for this recording. Okay, so imagine I am and the Father are one. Okay, so imagine you got what, 8 billion human beings on the planet. They're all talking from I am. Okay, so when you speak I am, you're speaking on behalf of the Almighty Possessor of the heaven and earth. Okay, so if you're speaking on behalf of the Almighty Possessor of the heaven and earth, you're speaking from the I statement. Okay, so the I statement is basically the programming. It's the beginning of the programming, and the programming all comes back to, hi Johnny, this is yours, and you start identifying with a language. You start identifying with words, which is a technology. Yeah, you start from a very young age, from mummy and daddy, and all the institutions like the churches, the schools, and we start learning that the will, there is a will inside you, and that is your will. And this has got to be the greatest myth and delusion of all time. And it's a very successful program. And the program was taken by most men, right, believing that their will, their body, their mind, their thoughts, everything about themselves are their own. And once you identify with your own, now you will defend your own position. You will defend the program that you have inserted into yourself. The program was encouraged from a very young age for you boys and girls to take possession of this program. And it started off where, hi, Johnny. Now, Johnny, this is yours, or whatever it is. So the identification started from a very young age that's me, mine. And we started to identify with things. And what that programming became, it became like an adoption program. We've adopted a program, right? Where we forsake the first program and we adopt a second program. The second program is the programming of man. And this programming starts off with mummy and daddy, and then goes into the kindergarten, then goes into the primary schools and to the high schools, and then goes into the universities, then goes into the governments and everything. It's all connected, right? So these programmings are very, very effective, very, very, they're highly successful, this programming. And what happens is these programmings that have been inserted into an individual, and the individual inserts them themselves, because they start believing their mummy and daddy. They start believing what they hear in church. They start believing what they start believing. Once you go into belief, you're going into possession. Belief is another word, and if you're looking up, if you need to look at what is belief, you want to be very careful before you start taking possession, and that's another word for belief. You're taking possession of something you believe is true, and you're relying on something, and you think, and there's no absolute proof. Yeah. There's no proof. There's nothing that will give you any. It's like on shifting sands. You're building a foundation, which is belief, and when you start building a house on shifting sands, the house will end up out in the ocean, because it's not built on the bedrock. And if you don't build your house on a bedrock, well, the consequences are quite severe. So belief is something where you're in possession, where you have conviction that you think you know something and you believe it. Once you go into belief, you go into perilous waters. You want to be very careful about going into any kind of belief. All right. So what you were talking before, we start defending this program that we started to feed from a very young age. And then when someone starts questioning you about the program, you start projectiling at them. You either get angry or upset with the one who's in front of you, and they're basically asking you questions, whatever, like, why do you see it that way? And it's very easy to get angry with someone because they're showing you, how the hell did you come up with such conclusions? Where did you come up with that information? And so forth. And it's the one thing we can't accept is that we're wrong about what we have believed to be true. And that's possibly the most shocking reality that comes before us. And we're defending a program that we've adopted for our own, and it's not even your program, and yet you'll go to war and kill another brother for it. It's fucking ludicrous. Anyway, next.
Thank you, brother, by the way.
Any of this making sense?
Any of this making sense?
Oh, beautiful sense, brother.
Because look, it's just this whole thing's about connecting the dots, right? Everything about this journey, it's like people who rise up against the system. It's the system that has created you. The system is perfect. It's created you. It made you believe everything, and now you want to go against the system. It's made in heaven. The system's designed for you to be against it. Yeah? What's to be against it? Yeah? When you're asking the question and you go into the matrix and you start to investigate the system and you're doing what the system does. Imagine the system is studying you. They come out and they investigate you. Whatever. You might make a claim or you may not make a claim. It's irrelevant. They are claiming that you've made a claim, that you're in possession of the possessor's property. So they're going to come and determine whether they confiscate property or they lock you up. Okay? So you've got to do what they do. What are they doing you're not doing? Down here, they read you the Firearms Act. Now, no one down here actually carries guns, yet the mouth is weaponised. The mouth is highly weaponised down here in this country. It's so weaponised that the authorities have to read out the Firearms Act because the people are lethal weapons. They are highly weaponised and they need to be locked up. And that's it. They're nuclear. It's like a nuclear bomb. I know I may be talking crazy, but you've got to understand, how is it possible that the centurions, the coppers, whatever you want to call them, they read you out the Firearms Act and you go, hang on a minute, I'm not carrying a firearm. Well, excuse me, you are. You've just spoken from I am. You just said I'm not. Now we have to read it out because you're speaking before the Almighty. I am. Once you speak I am, you're going to be taken down. Got to lock you up. It's not your property. You're in possession. I am and the Father are one. If that's true, the possessor, I am the Father are one, which is the possessor of the heaven and earth. And if you don't deal with possession, the have, the got, the your, and all of that, well, you're in the 9/10 of the game. And the 9/10 of the law, it's there, basically, it's Charlie in the chocolate factory. Every claim has its drain, and there you'll be going.
By saying I am.
By saying you are, or by saying I am, you've divided yourself from the whole. Right? So if you say I am, even if you say I am not, right? It's the same thing. You got the negative and there's the positive. So hang on a moment. Where's the neutral ground? Does anyone know what the neutral ground is?
What do you mean by neutral ground?
Neutral, brother. If you're in a volatile cocktail, how do you bring a volatile cocktail back to zero? If something's going to explode in your face, how do you zero it out? What's the physics in it? Just remember, language, brothers, is a technology that's nuclear, okay? And if you don't know how to use the language, you want to be very careful how to use this technology because it's like physics, okay? Physics is like a laboratory factory. So if you're using I am and if you're using am I, I'm not, there's positive and negative. The only thing that zeroes out the positive and negative, what do you think that is, boys and girls? I'm just saying it's volatile, boys and girls. It's volatile. It's a volatile cocktail.
Nuclear would be core.
All right, well, don't worry about something. I'm just trying to give you a picture of something that's explosive, okay?
Well, yeah.
I'm trying to give you a picture. There's something that's explosive. And the only thing that zeroes it out, boys, the physics of language, right? The only thing that brings it back to zero is am I. Is anyone cotton onto this stuff?
I believe so, brother.
Well, just am I? It's very, am I considering this? Am I? It's you got I am not, am I? Well, boys and girls, I'm just asking that you consider the physics of language.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm asking that rather than we going into interpretation of language, that we start listening to the first proposition in everything that's spoken, and we start to renew the mind. It comes back to whose property is this? It's all property. And when we speak about this property, we're using a technology that we got really no idea how to use. And it's causing great suffering and great pain and suffering in this world. All because of this technology that's spewing out of the mouth of man.
Thinking about it as a technology is helpful to me.
It's technology. Who can even imagine who can even imagine such a technology that's in all particles? It's in every, all the thoughts of man, and yet we've been this doctrine of man has been passed on to us like a cancer, and it slowly eats away at every man until he repents, until he starts to consider the designer of all these things. Because if we're living on this planet and we're in a house and we think it's my house, yet we don't consider who built this house, and we think it's man, and we think everything's man, but we don't consider the maker of man, well, we're going to be in all sorts of shit.